I hate networking. I still hate networking. I got good at networking and I hate networking. I need to network. I need to meet people. And the only way to actually meet people is to be in their presence. So when I came across my next guest and saw the book that she wrote and kind of her passion in life, I was really, really, really intrigued because what I'm noticing, and if you've listened to some of the past episodes, the economy is changing. COVID has sped up the people losing their corporate regular supposedly safe jobs and now have to go out into the world and live by their wits. And that's terrifying for you if you've had a job for 20 years. Now you need to go out and figure out how do you make a living in a different way. So this conversation is so timely. It's really good for college kids coming out of school and that kind of thing, but it's good for all of us because when I became an entrepreneur, I need to learn to talk to people. I need, being a rabid introvert, I need to go out and meet people because I'm only as good as my network. So Pat Hedley is an investor, an advisor. She's a TEDx speaker. She's the CEO of The Path Ahead, where she identifies high growth companies in which she invests and takes on either formal or informal advisory roles. So she's got a day job, but she cares about this topic. We're going to find out why in a couple minutes. She wrote a book called Meet 100 People, a how-to guide to the career and life edge everyone is missing. It's crazy. She spent her life, she built her business this way, so she's going to teach us. Pat, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just so appreciate you. So before we turn on the cameras, I said, so why do you care? You got a job, you got a business, you're good. Why do you care that people learn how to meet each other?
I care because I have seen the life-changing impact that networking can have. So I wrote Meet 100 People 4 years ago, and I wrote it for three reasons. I wrote it's because it's career advice I wish I had had when I was first starting out. It's career advice I give to young professionals, including my 3 adult children, who I'm happy to say are gainfully employed. And it's advice I follow myself. I was with the same firm for 30 years. I learned a tremendous amount there. I actually saw some master networkers and worked alongside with people who I consider master networkers while I was there. And then I decided to make a change. And in the last 5 years, I've had to reinvent myself. And I have invested in and advised growth companies. And the one question people always ask me is, how did you find these companies? And the answer is that I meet a lot of people, and I've seen the effects and the incredible benefits that you can have by meeting new people, because I very much strongly believe that the more people you meet, the more opportunities present themselves to you. But there's also tremendous learning in the process of meeting new people, learning about what they're doing, learning about yourself, increasing your confidence, being your own journalist on life, in essence, if you talk to and learn from other people. So I've seen the value firsthand. Everything that's happened to me after publishing the book has really been as a result of meeting incredible people. And it's opened doors for me I never would have thought I would have had opened. I've been on a TV program, many podcasts, the TEDx talk that you mentioned, and each one of them has come from having conversations with people where they referred me to someone or I met somebody as a result.
I just think it's getting even more important. Like, as connected as we think we are with social media and all that stuff, we aren't as connected as we think. And to go out and actually shake hands with people now that we can do that again, to actually meet people face to face. You cited a statistic that people are more likely to grant a request, many times over, done in person rather than text or email.
And 34 times more often you'll get a positive response if you ask in person. And I would make them, I don't know if they've done the study since, but I would suspect that virtual meetings are also highly effective and much more effective than just phone calls or emails. I think the personal connection really matters a lot. How you approach it and how you follow up and continue to build and maintain those relationships is really critical. And I think in this hybrid world in which we're living, where some of our connections will have to be virtual, and I will say it is a huge silver lining that we as a society now are comfortable with Zoom, and that many of us, I know I'm in that category, prefer Zoom over a phone call, especially with someone that I've never met before, because there is huge value in getting a chance to connect with someone in a different way than you might just through email or a phone call.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. In fact, none of my clients are local. All of my clients are all over the world in Zoom. I have not met in person many of my clients. I have never shaken their hands or met them. But they all came from referrals from people that I know. And you put these little tidbits into your book that really fascinated me. So the cliche is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. But you added, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's who knows you. And the only way people are going to know you is if you're visible and out in the world.
You have to be visible, and honestly, we, each one of us, regardless of what profession we're in, have to create a brand. We have to create our own brand, whether you're in the arts, whether you're in a corporation, whether you're in, any kind of freelance role. The brand you create is incredibly important. So you have to give some thought to that. And then you have to think about who your audience is, just as a company needs to think about their audience. Who are the people you want to get out in front of? Who are the people that you should know because you're going to learn from them? Who are the people that you can be helpful to? Those are all incredibly important exercises that it's worthwhile to go through.
90% of my clients are from people I was helpful to in passing.
Right.
So it's not only who's going to help me. It's not only going and looking for that. It's, where did I drop some seeds and kindness along the way and value so that returned to me years later.
It's one of the things that I think, one of the many things that people fear in networking is this fear that they have nothing to give. And I think that people really have to rethink that, because I think everyone has something to offer, and you may not have something to give right in that first meeting, but if you're thoughtful about listening to what the other person needs, you can follow up and give them something later. And I love to share this story about how I did my TEDx talk, because I would have never gotten to do it if it weren't for a young woman just out of college who came to me for career advice. And we went to the same school. And when she asked me to have coffee, I said, of course, I'm happy to. And we did. And I talked to her and gave her some career advice. We connected on our mutual love of Asian food. So she invited me out to Flushing, Queens to have Asian food again. And we did. And it was something that I will always remember. And then we stayed in touch. She, several months later, reached out to me and said, I'd like to nominate you to be a TEDx speaker. And are you interested in that? And it's always been on my bucket list, secretly on my bucket list. And when Victoria offered it to me, I was thrilled. I said, please do nominate me. And I was accepted. I've never prepared for anything more in my life. It's now online and it's live. And honestly, it would not have happened if it weren't for this young woman who came to me for help. So I was helping her, and yet she gave me a beautiful gift. And I think this is an important story, because if you listen well and think about the people that you interact with, you can find ways to be helpful to them in the future, not necessarily that day, but in the future, if you have the right mindset.
It's kind of amazing. It's, the more people you know, the luckier you are, the more serendipity can happen. And by the way, we're going to put the link to that TEDx talk in the show notes so people can go see that. So let's start with the beginning. So I'm a rabid introvert. I was a sales guy for a long time, so I was used to being out in the world, and I was used to putting on a show in my networking meetings because I was representing a company. And then I became an entrepreneur, and I'm representing myself. For many years, I actually didn't go out into the world because I didn't have to, which was really detrimental to my business. I was busy mastering my craft, so that was my excuse. But it was really, I didn't want to go out into the world. I found that I loved being at home and that I'm a rabid introvert. When it was suggested to me by my mastermind to join a networking meeting just to get me out of the house, terrified. how do you take introverts, people who are shy, people who have never been the life of the party? How do you get them out into the world and shaking hands?
I think that's an excellent question. And it's actually an excellent question to me because I consider myself an introvert too. And it is partly the reason I wrote the book because I do understand what holds people back. I am reserved by nature. I love to read. I'm perfectly happy being in my home office. And yet, it is essential to get out there and to meet people. And I learned that in my career that those people who did that well were more successful. What has helped me to get beyond that is that I learned about myself that I am naturally curious. So my curiosity is what helps me overcome some of my, inhibitions about going out and meeting people. I'm actually really curious and interested in hearing people's stories. I love to learn. I love to find out new information. So that matters to me. For other people, other things hold them back. And in many cases, it's fear. It's fear of something. And I kind of think of it as fear of three different things. One reason people say they don't like to reach out to others is they fear they're not going to hear anything. They're going to get crickets. And that's sometimes intimidating. And to that, I say, you know what? Most of the time, it's not about you, it's about them. If you get crickets, it's that your email got lost or they're having a bad day or something else is going on.
I
Try
can't tell you how many
again.
times I've opened an email on my phone, right? Because I was in the middle of something, said, oh, I'm going to get back to that, never get back to it. And it gets buried later on. And it was something I actually wanted to respond to.
Right. So that happens. So you have to understand that and don't take it personally. Try again. Change your approach a little bit. And if you've tried once or twice or three times and it doesn't work, move on. That's okay too. So fear number one is crickets. Fear number two is this horrible little two-letter word called no. People are afraid of the word no. People are afraid that people won't accept an outreach or for whatever reason will say no. And to that, I say, you know what? Get used to the word no. Sometimes people do say no. If you reach out to somebody new, especially through a warm referral, the chances of a no are actually quite small. If somebody that I know asks me to meet someone, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because I care about the person who asked me. So when you first start to network, reach out to people who you have a warm referral to, somebody that you already know. And that makes a big difference. The third thing that people worry about, believe it or not, is the word yes. They're actually going to have a meeting with someone. And oh my God, what do I do now? Especially young people get nervous about that. And I totally understand it. And sometimes when I meet somebody new who I've never met with before, and this happened to me just this week, I had lunch with somebody brand new. You get a little bit nervous, and that's okay. My curiosity helps me overcome it. And a couple of other things help me out a lot too. I really believe in doing research before you have a meeting with someone. Do the simplest thing. Go on to LinkedIn. You learn an awful lot right there. Go on to Google, do a Google search, find out something interesting about them. And if you find out something interesting about them, you'll feel a whole lot better. Going into a meeting prepared just makes you feel much more comfortable. And then go in with the right mindset. Go in with the mindset of not necessarily impressing somebody with your brilliance. Instead, go in and impress with your good questions and your thoughtful listening. And there's such value to listening well. And I know you had a previous guest, Meredith Bell, on your show who talked about the value of listening. And I so agree with that. So few people are in the moment and are really listening to the things somebody else is saying. And if you can do that well, you have a huge win right there. So
You
those
said something really interesting in the book. It's when you go into a meeting, you're going at first glance, you're going to be different. You're going to see where you're different, where you don't connect, and that your job is to go into the meeting and find that place of commonality, find that place to connect. And I thought that was really insightful and also relaxing. Don't go in to impress. Don't like get all that stuff out of there. Just look for where you have a connection with that person or a similarity. Like you just said, you bonded over Asian food with that young lady. There's always something because we're humans.
We're humans. And you know what? And when you find something that you genuinely enjoy and you can share, all of a sudden it becomes fun. I will tell you one way. I mean, look, if you go into somebody's office, everything they've put there is something they care about. So it's okay to say, oh my God, that's my favorite book too. Or, oh, what a wonderful picture of you, wherever the picture is. Those are all perfectly fair things to do because it starts to forge a connection. And similarly, in this new hybrid world, we get a little peek at what somebody cares about by the background that they have sometimes. And I met a young man not too long ago. I did an event for him and I noticed the artwork behind him and I happened to mention it. And we connected on that topic in a way that I thought was really special. I suggested an artist that he should look up on Instagram that had a similar style. And we had a conversation and it made it so much more human before we embarked on the business related conversation. So finding some way in which you can connect on a human level, something that is a shared interest, a topic, a book, the love of Asian food, whatever it is, it's all totally fine to build that kind of connection. And I think the one other thing that people use as an excuse for not wanting to network is that they don't have time. And to that, I would say, if you have time to eat, you have time to meet. Find ways to make something that you're going to do anyway into a relationship building event. Ask
That whole
someone.
never eat alone thing.
Never Eat Alone. It's a wonderful book by Keith Ferrazzi. I used to give it to all the new hires, at my firm long ago. The title says it all. Don't go to lunch alone. Ask people to coffee. And guess what? You could do it virtually too. I've asked people to virtual lunches and virtual coffees during the pandemic, and it works just as
Oh, I
effectively.
never thought of that. That's
I do that
an
often. I mean, you know what? Just because I can't have coffee with you in real life doesn't mean we can't have coffee together over the internet. And it works. And similarly, ask somebody to go on a walk with you. Ask somebody to go to an exercise class with you. Do things that you enjoy doing that the other person might enjoy doing as well, and fit it into your schedule. So this notion of not having time is I think one of the poorest excuses because you can make time if you care about it, and you can stack a couple of things that you love to do with the idea of meeting people and talking to people.
nice. So you did another paradigm shift in the beginning of the TED Talk, and you talk about it in the book also with your mentee, the young guy Taylor. Um, he where he was going to go out to look for a job, and you were helping him go meet people. And someone said to him, "Stop looking for a job. Make your job meeting 100 people. Stop trying to get something, and your job is to meet 100 people. The job will come from that different goal." And I love the way that you shifted that task. And I'm looking for my notes because that came to another point where he says you don't need to be an expert in your field right away. Like if you come out of college, you don't have to be an expert. If you're changing careers, you don't have to be an expert right away. What you need to do is be an expert in meeting people. That is the new skill these days. Is you need to be an expert in connecting with other people, because your wealth, your job, everything is going to come from that vast network.
I so very much believe that. So I was at the same firm for 30 years. And while I was there, I had a number of new opportunities that were presented to me. I called them blank sheet of paper opportunities. And I actually was not qualified for either of the two roles that I was asked to take on. And I was not troubled by that. And the reason I was not troubled by it, because very early in my career, I worked for a consulting firm. And one of the important takeaways is that you don't have to be an expert in everything, or honestly in anything, as long as you can find the people who are experts, learn rapidly, synthesize that information, and make it your own. So
Mm.
the two times that I was asked to take on brand new responsibilities at my former firm, I was willing to say yes to that. And one of the first things I did was I found counterparts of mine in other companies to learn from them. That was my very first assignment for myself, is to do that research, talk to them, ask them about their jobs. In a way, they became my mentors without me asking them that question. But it's totally fine to say, I'm new to the role. I'm trying to learn from other people who are similar to me in this role. would you tell me about what are the important things that you do? Tell me about how you've progressed in your career. Tell me about how you look for resources. Tell me about how you're measured. I mean, I could think of dozens of incredibly important questions you could ask somebody else who isn't in the role that you're now sitting in,
Mm.
where you can learn a tremendous amount. And it can be done internally. Sometimes you have to do that same kind of research within your own firm. But I very much believe in doing it externally as well. Talking to peers, talking to others who are in similar roles, joining groups and associations of people who have similar jobs to yours. Because if you do that, you're going to have a way advantage. You're going to have just a leg up on others who don't do that. And so many people don't. They don't take the time and the effort to talk to their peers. And oh my gosh, there's a wealth of information that people are just so happy to share because they're also willing to learn and they want to learn from you.
Yeah, there's a small percentage of people who hold their cards close to their vest, don't want to share anything, don't want to share resources, don't want to share how they do things. All that. The vast majority of people really do want to help. They want to feel like they made an impact. So that follow-up, you talk also how important it is, the follow-up, thank you, the follow-up, because people want that closed circuit. They gave, they connected. Now, did it make an impact? And if you send a note back saying how much this meant to you, thank you so much. Or I noticed you talked about Bavarian cream pie, and there happens to be a place here in town that you would love. Like, anything that showed that you listened just closes the circuit and makes you, memorable. You said something also, which was really cool. And I love this because when I was a sales guy, if I lost a sale, I would be so gracious. I would be ridiculously gracious about losing the sale. I would offer any help to make sure that there is success, because guess what? I always got the call if the person who they bought made screwed up, or the next time they were going to buy something, or if I went to another company, so I always had those relationships. You said one of your strongest relationships was someone you went and met, and you didn't get the job, or you didn't get what you were looking for, but he was so gracious about the way he said no to you that was a lifelong friendship.
It is so true. I mean, saying no and being gracious, it's not necessarily something that's taught, but I can tell you it really matters. The way you say no to somebody and the way you receive that information from someone, it can be life changing. And no is a static point in time event. No doesn't mean no forever. No doesn't mean you're not going to have some kind of relationship, some kind of business relationship later on. The situation that you mentioned in my book was an interview I had, and it was one of my first job rejections. I did not proceed in the interview, and this individual called me and just said it to me in such a polite way that I didn't feel badly about it at all. And what do you know, years later, I was on the client side and he was a banker showing us deals. So tables almost had turned at that point. Many years later, he actually bought a home next to my house. Years after that, he came to me for career advice. And this is how life is. Young people don't understand that this road is very long, and you don't know when you're going to bump into people again and again and again. And you don't know who that might be. So you actually have to treat everybody with grace and with respect, because you never know.
It's crazy. It's funny because I work with someone at one job probably 18 years ago, and never talked again after we left. Like, I hadn't talked to them in 18 years. Followed them on social media and everything like that. And she sent me a note over Messenger, and she said, "Mark, I'm giving my first presentation to my team. I've never done this before. I'm in charge of it. Can you give me any advice?" And it was so lovely after 18 years, that I was able to, and I was able to set her, it took me 3 minutes. I set her up for success with just a couple of tips. She sent me a note back saying that she crushed it, which I knew she would anyway, which is part of what I told her. I'm like, you can't, you're the most competent human being on the planet. No, it's not going to be a problem here. Just go be you and be curious about them. Anyway, but that's 18 years of not even ever talking. But because we had a good relationship, then we kind of watched each other over social media. She knows what I'm doing now. We were able to, do that. And it's just, and who knows, 3 years from now, she may be talking to a senior leader who is completely overwhelmed and say, you really need to talk to Mark Silverman. You just never, ever know. So be kind along the way.
You never ever know. And I think the other important point that you make here is reach out to people from your past. People that you had business relationships with that you might not have heard of, people that come up on your LinkedIn feed and it says it's their birthday today. Actually make the connection, because if there's no reason not to, first of all, and why not just say hello? Why not see what they're up to?
I will. I will say
know.
why. I'll tell you why. Because again, I'm a shy person. I'm an introvert, and the hardest thing for me to do when I started this business was to go back to my network of people that I knew, because I was afraid I didn't have the relationship capital that I actually had. So it was terrifying for me to pick up the phone, send a note to a VP I used to work with, to someone, and like, do they care? Do they want to know me? And did I make any impression whatsoever? And 9 times out of 10, it was like, oh my God, Mark, I see what you're doing. It's amazing. But you can't tell my ego that. You can't tell my fear that. You can't tell that 1,000-pound phone that. So I want to tell people, like, I look like a confident guy. People think of me as a confident guy. I speak my mind. And even I have the 1,000-pound phone to call someone in my past. And I've been really good to everybody in my past. And I'm still scared to talk to people. And the shocking thing is how warm people are.
People are very warm, and I think it's also important to take those calls well. I just got a call from someone I worked with 10 years ago. I was thrilled to hear from him. I wanted to see what was going on in his life. It was exciting for me. And what do you know? He led me to something that might be an opportunity for me down the line. You have to embrace those calls, and you have to have the confidence to make those calls too, and to reconnect with people. And it's perfectly fine to say, you know what, it's been forever. But I thought of you, and think of right about something from the past that you relate to. I loved our time when we were together as young associates at X company, and I'd love to catch up and hear what you're up to, and I'd love to tell you what I'm doing.
These days, it's so easy too, because you can go on social media and stalk people, find out what they're up to. You can get a little information
Yeah.
so that you can show some interest in them. Hey, I noticed that you had a baby. I just want to say congratulations. It's so, I can't, all these cold notes to people send to me. They want to sell me something and they'll say, hey, tell me about your business. I'm like, if you spent 30 seconds on my website, that I work with overwhelmed executives. They get, and you can start with, hey, Mark, I see you do this.
Right.
You own me, right? Like it takes
so true.
So little.
Same with me too. I get so many LinkedIn requests. I'd love to be part of your network. That doesn't work. How about I read your book or I saw your TEDx talk and it was great. And you know what? I'd love to be able to talk a little bit more about your passion. Like that works.
And then you own me. Totally. I'm an egomaniac. Totally. So I'm gonna end with like, there's so many one-liners are so good. You've taken something that's so scary and seems so complicated, and you've just made it really simple. And people should buy this book. It's like you sit down for 2.5, 3 hours, and you now have a roadmap for how to do this. Steve Chandler always says, the answer to how is yes. So you have to say yes, that you're willing to go do this. You're willing to put yourself out there. And now you buy Pat's book, and now you have the how to. So the last pithy little thing that I want to share is, you said, the more interested you are, the more interesting you become. So I'm always afraid that I'm not that interesting. Got it backwards. I'm actually not that interesting. The more interested I am in someone else, the more interesting they'll find me. And that's such a secret to being popular. If I'm insanely, we talked about Meredith Bell being on the podcast. Woman's insanely curious. She makes you feel like the most special human you've ever met. Sam Horn is another one I've interviewed. It just makes you feel so special. To me, they're the most interesting people in the world. Why? Because they were interested in me. And I think that's such a great shortcut to being able to create relationship.
And there's so much to learn. I mean, I think that every single person has a treasure. And it's up to you to find that treasure, to uncover that treasure. So the challenge is, what are those couple of questions that are going to unearth the treasure of what that person holds?
Mm.
And therein lies something super special. I mean, you know, if you have that perspective on networking, that you're treasure hunting and you're looking for, you know, wisdom and cool nuggets of advice or different perspectives on the world, windows onto things that you don't know about. Oh my gosh, it makes it fun. It actually makes it life affirming and enjoyable.
It's amazing. We some colleagues, I almost forgot to mention this. So some colleagues and I were part of a business club called the Tower Club pre-COVID, and we just didn't like the way networking meetings were going. You know, we would go to the chamber meetings or BNI or something like that, and you exchange cards and stuff like that. So we started this thing called the Disruption and Innovation Club, and it was networking differently. And our when we had our meetings, and by the third meeting we had 90 people. By the third meeting we had 90 people. It's crazy.
Wow.
It was so much fun. But we had this rule that you can't ask anybody what they do for a living, right? We gave them a list of questions and you had to ask those questions to learn about them and know if they told you what they did for a living, they lost, we had beads, they lost their beads and you got to take them. And the person with the most beads at the end won this big prize because we wanted people to understand and get to know people on different levels. So if you go to networking meetings with an interest to find out those treasures that you just said, rather than trying to get a business card or getting a business card into somebody else's hand, you will create relationships that are gold. Just brilliant.
Yep.
Pat, thank you for this. I really, it's just so simple. You just made it so straightforward and simple. And people are going to, the next 5 years, your book is going to keep increasing in sales because people need this more now more than ever. So where can people find you if they want more of you?
You can find me on my website, meet100people.com. You could see, you know, some of the other posts that I have. And I'm on LinkedIn, Pat Hedley at LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Really, I thank you. Thank you again for sharing yourself
Thank you so
and
much.
creating this.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. I hope people think about networking just a little bit differently. My goal is to reframe the way people think of networking.
I already do. Like when I say that you simply change the paradigm, you really did. So that's why you're here, and I appreciate it. To everybody else, you know, I love you. I appreciate your time and attention. Have a great rest of the day, and go meet somebody.